For this particular game against Mickey, my second there was the Norwegian Grandmaster Kjetil Lie, who had been working. He'd been working a lot on the Nimsa with Queen C2, and for this game we'd looked at this system with B6, which Short had been playing a lot, and he had found some interesting ideas here by going for Bishop F4 and simply taking that pawn on C7. Should be noted that nowadays people just go castling. A bunch of people go castling instead, and the idea is the same. It's just that here there's also Queen D5 in this particular.
And this is a highly drawish variation, as I recall. There's some lines.
Yeah, it's there are a bunch of forced draws here. Anyway, sort of the predecessor to that line was the immediate DC4 and then B6. So Bishop F4, Knight D5 is a little bit awkward for Black, as that knight will be driven back with E4 pretty soon. So he just decides to give up a pawn. I think castles was a new idea, but I remember clearly that my second he had told me that castle was probably the best move here. So it was not a real shocker that he went for it, but still I don't think I could really properly remember. Think probably the main move we're considering was knight to C6 here. I'm not really sure about that.
So why can Black reasonably count on some compensation in this line?
So some long-term factors are obviously very bad for Black. He's sacrificed a pawn and given up the bishop pair and some central control as well. The thing is, what Black concretely has is active pieces, especially bishop on A6 and the rook controlling the C file, and White has very little development. So in that sense, it's pretty easy to see why somebody would go for this line. So I think a natural move like E3 would very much play into Black's hands here. He would exchange. He would go rook to C2. If I were to protect it with B4, then the knight can come to C3, also controlling the C file. It's really hard for White to break out. So I have to be a bit smarter about it. And that's why I went knight to D2 instead. And I think he had alternatives, but let's just show what happened in the game. Knight goes to B3, and here he was threatening mate. Knight goes to B3, and the idea is shown on the next move. Then rook desperately needs to be kicked out of C2, and going to A1 traps it.
Iconic, knight A1.
I don't know about that, but I was definitely pretty happy about it. And the move would still not make a whole lot of sense unless I'm going to go back after after we had traded rooks. And now, concretely, I'm covering both the key entry squares, C1 and C2.
Right.
And those long-term factors we were talking about earlier on, they're looking pretty good for White. Like, if given time, I'm going to go F3. I'm going to go E4. I'm going to go I don't know, bishop a6. I'm going to go king d2. I'm just going to be pawn up with a very good position. So this and in long term, that knight on a1 is not a problem. That knight is gonna get out. So the only question is still short term, can you get counterplay here?
Right. Was this knight d2 b3 a1 maneuver something you remember looking at with 𝐲𝐶, or was it over the board inspiration?
I think that was over the board. Yeah. With apologies to him if he can remember that being in the notes, but yeah, I think in this particular way, I had to come up with it over the board, which was something I was pretty happy with.
Yeah, that's cool.
Obviously, so he goes 95. Not a lot of choices here. Bishop d2 and e5, and here I went for e3. And to be honest, I'm not too sure about e3. The thing is that after he gets to capture on e4, he will have such a strong blockade on d5, and my knight on a1 is so far away from challenging that particular blockade that it's gonna be pretty hard for me to break his position down. So I think I was definitely worried about something like takes. If I go f3, preparing e4, he's got f5, and I felt like knight c4 was coming, and in case I go e3, there's bishop d3, also maybe knight d3. It didn't make me very comfortable.
Yeah, knight c4 looks annoying. I see we have g3 in the notes, but that's
g3, then knight c4. I guess the point is I go like bishop h3, and if take on b2, like king f2, and f5 is hanging there, but
hitting the bishop on
b1. I guess I didn't feel the need to play quite that concretely, but I can sort of see the attraction of this line as well, keeping a structure that allows me to play more easily for a win there.
Yeah, because in a perfect world, you probably wouldn't want that isolated pawn.
No. So I guess that would have been an alternative. Anyway, I went e3, which is obviously very, very safe. Still no entry squares. If rook e8, I don't go bishop e2 because of bishop d3, but I simply go king d1, where the king feels comfortable, and next I'm going bishop b5 probably. Also preparing knight c2 in some lines.
Yeah, and a lot of amateurs would be worried about their king being in center in a position like this, but queen's off the board,
yeah, stable, and no entry squares. Like the king in the center would be a problem if the black rook could get active, but since it cannot, then that's not a pressing issue. So he took, I guess knight f8 in a sense is more logical here, since e6 looks like a more stable square than c6. Exactly why I didn't go for it, I don't know. But white is still better. Bishop goes to a6 and knight to b3. And I suppose in case of bishop to c2, I can go bishop c4. And b5 here. I guess I don't have to take. Maybe I can go knight a1 instead. And it feels like white is still better.
Return for the third time to a1.
Yeah.
With advantage.
With more to come. Maybe. I don't know about too much of an advantage, but at least I'm keeping the game going.
Yeah. So knight f8 may be more promising.
I think knight f8 may have been better. But even here in the game, I just felt that he has such a nice blockade, and my pieces are just so clumsily played that he just has such a nice blockade that I remember being highly frustrated during the game that I felt like I'd done so much work and I was so far from winning the game still here.
And I've studied a lot of Michael Adams' games. I mean, you talk about a great strategic player. He's been really helpful for me in seeing some of these strategic ideas we're talking about over the years. I've seen a lot of games where as black, he's okay with giving up a pawn, but trying to neutralize pressure over time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a typical way for him to try and defend. Like something has gone a bit wrong, but he has such a keen feeling of he has such a keen positional sense that he can find these setups that allow him to be fine even without a pawn, and he will not necessarily seek a concrete solution to his problem. He's just okay with taking a position he can hold.
Yeah.
And I think in this case he was fairly right, and I made this move a4, which looks odd.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was getting a bit short of time here, and it was I think it was a case of me getting a bit desperate, to be honest.
To create winning chances?
Yeah, because I really didn't see where I was going. He has easy moves like king e7 coming next, possibly knight e7, exchanging of those bishops, and with this incredibly poor knight and on b3, I didn't really see what my big advantage was, and so I guess I was just trying to create some activity with a5, trying to force him to make a decision there. And
that's definitely a common strategic theme. A poor knight right there, restricted by a pawn on b6.
Yeah,
I haven't seen b3, b6, g3, g6.
Exactly. The knight restricted by a pawn. 3 squares away on the same file is usually pretty weak.
Yeah.
And I think I was also hoping maybe to push the pawn to a6, but in general I was just a bit desperate, and I thought maybe also in the end it's not the worst thing to have a pawn on the light squares, in case these bishops get traded. And a5 is sort of what I was hoping for, I would say, because now b6 is always going to be an issue, and I think this was a case of him trying to keep it just a bit too simple. And now knight is getting to d2, possibly to c4 later, and I have something to play for. I have some kind of target there.
Mm-hmm.
And this move bishop f1, I think I spent basically all my remaining time playing this particular line, but I'd found this idea which I thought was really nice. I remember being very much uninspired by takes and knight d5, and although clearly the inclusion of a4 and a5 has been beneficial for white, I still felt like it was a long way off to win the game. Nowadays, I probably would have been more excited about this possibility, because I can see that even though it's hard to improve my position, it's probably even harder to improve black's. And
seems like your bishop is the big question mark here.
Yeah, but over time I can maybe go g3, bring the king to d3, try and eventually infiltrate them with the king on c4. It feels like there are some possibilities there, and with move like bishop f1, you risk losing the advantage immediately. But anyway, I had a concrete idea in mind, which I have to say worked out pretty well. Mm-hmm. So he takes. A key point is here that I would love to go knight c4. But here, once again, you have to keep tactics in mind. He has time for knight b3, attacking the rook. Rook moves, then he goes knight d5, and he has a bunch of activity. So this is simply not desirable. So I have to go rook e1 first, just to make sure that he doesn't gain time by attacking the rook. If, let's say, king to f8, then I would go knight c4, and he would have no convenient way of protecting that pawn.
Yeah, no knight b3 with tempo. That's huge.
Yeah. So he goes for knight c6. Yeah, probably knight e6 was more precise here. Then he can also go knight c5 in some lines. And here I should go for rook a1, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like white has a whole lot, to be honest. So knight e6 was definitely more precise.
Mm-hmm.
That's the second time in the game that plan with knight to e6 is better than going to c6.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the whole point, which I was pretty proud of, having found a few moves earlier, and I was very short on time. As I said, I think I had virtually no time left, but at the very least now I had a clear plan, as we will see in the game.
That's a very hard move to explain to a beginner. Why would you put your rook behind a pawn that you're not intending to move on the next move or soon?
So it's very concrete. I have the bishop here. I want to retain it. I wanna regroup the bishop by going bishop d1, king to g1, bishop to f2, and I simply want the rook to attack b6, so that if takes, he cannot defend this particular pawn. If he takes, this is going to be check, and the pawn is going to hang next. So it's all strategy combined with little tactics.
Yeah, that's very harmonious when you see the idea.
So we went king f8, bishop e1, king e7. I think this whole idea of king f8 to e7 is not great, seeing as there are still rooks on the board. The center is pretty open, so I'm not really sure that his king is going to be too happy being there in the center. Here he goes knight b8. Finally, he figures out that the knight should go closer to c5 instead of being there on c6, like it should have gone to e6 earlier on. Mm-hmm. And here I can remember using the half a minute that I had of increment to calculate take on b6, and but I just couldn't make it work. There was knight d7, bishop before king e6, rook e1, king d5, bishop b5, and
that's a big risk to take on increment.
Exactly. I could see that it was probably working, but you got to remember that this is a knockout tournament.
Yep.
Even though it was the first game, I still felt that
best of two matches,
that I had a huge advantage in the game, so I didn't really wanna rock the boat. Still. So what happened is I repeated moves a few times. I got to the time control, and
it's a good tip for you guys, by the way.
Yeah,
trying to make time control. Not a bad idea to repeat if you can, if you're under pressure.
So he could have retreated the bishop here, but anyway, here bishop to b5 coming. It's pretty sad on his part. So he decided to give up the bishop, but now he still has now I still have two bishops versus two knights, and although these knights look a lot more active than the bishops, trust me, the bishops are they're better.
Long range pieces.
Yeah,
and also because there's pawns on both sides of the board.
Definitely, and the pawn on b6 is a concrete weakness. The pawn black, once again, if the black pawn was an a7, we would have a bit of a different story, but here it's pretty good for white.
Just out of curiosity, if the queenside pawns were all gone here, would this still be a position where you could see yourself pressing?
Not seriously, no.
Okay.
Might try, but probably with very little chance of success. So yeah, it's all about those pawns on both sides. You really only need one queenside pawn. Let's say the a pawns were gone, or the b pawns were there. I would still say that white has very good winning chances. Okay, so f4. I don't know if that was great, but it was all about. I don't know. I think at this point I was pretty tired, and I wanted to force the game. I think I'd spent a lot of time already after the time control trying to find a concrete way to win, which was not so easy. And yeah, here it could be that king d6 was better, keeping king in the center as he'd been trying to do earlier on. But still, even though the knights are perfectly centralized, bishops are still better. But still, it may have been a better chance, because here, after what happened in the game, he doesn't have a real foothold for the knights.
So you're using your pawns to push his knights back, discoordinate them, and he's always hesitant to capture f4, of course, because he loses b6 in many of those lines.
Yeah, and it should be noted that the line that I needed to calculate was knight f4, rook e4. He has this little trick with knight e6, but I remember being very confident that this would at least be huge winning chances for me.
Yeah.
And one key point is that in case he goes rook a2, then I have b3 and bishop a4 next wins the pawn and probably the game.
I guess you could go bishop c5, bishop c4 in that case.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's true. As I was talking about earlier, always look for tactics.
I gotta get one tactic on you in this session.
You gotta. So let's say Michael
rook a1,
king f2, whatever, and then king e7. Then I would go b3.
Right.
But that's a very good point.
Hey, again, you can see the presence of one pair of pawns. Like, if you get rid of those pawns, drop it.
Then just a drop for sure. And I would say. Here, if he takes some rook b4, there was bishop c5, and if he takes some g5, still rook g5 fails to bishop b4 with a pass pawn. and the two bishops should be plain sailing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, knight h6. Obviously, this is a lot worse than the line we were talking about earlier on, bringing the knight to e4. Once again, little tactics. Knight f4, bishop c5, winning the exchange of the game.
Nice.
Knight e7, there's rook d3, preparing bishop f2 back, and that's going to be pretty hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
So he went knight f5, but now the bishop just drops back. G4, there's f5, and now bishop g2.
Yeah.
And that's
another bishop regrouping for good measure.
Yeah. And now I finally win the pawn. And here I think I just didn't want to really calculate the consequences of b3 too much. But also I think I was getting short of time again.
Mm-hmm.
I was really pretty nervous at this point.
So this looks like a tough decision for Black. Practically, which pawns he wants to try to save there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just White is always going to be winning here, but I was just so short of time that I was not really sure about anything, and I wanted to calculate everything to the end. And it seems like White should obviously be winning since I have an advantage of the two bishops, and besides, my kingside pawns are more advanced, which makes them an obvious candidate for promotion, especially the pawn on f5, and also the a5 pawn is extremely weak.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the choice of allowing bishop f8 or me taking on a5, and he chose king d8. I'm not sure if it was great, but I think this one should be pretty easily winning. G6. I'm gonna take it at h4. There are so few pawns left, but it has to be remembered that two bishops against a knight is winning.
Yeah. Yep. There's a nice line there too with knight takes h3.
Yeah, knight takes h3. G5.
Breakthrough move and that f pawn corralling the knights.
Yeah, and that's really a picture of complete domination. I guess I would like the bishop to come to e2 as well, just to make sure.
This is a reversal of your Sveshnikov theory. The bishop actually is dominating the knight this time.
For sure.
No doubt about it.
It makes it easier when the bishop is in the middle of the board and the knight is on the rim. Then they usually do dominate the knights. So he decided to give up the a pawn instead.
Which you don't have to take right away. That's nice.
Yeah. I just protect h3. Here I was still so nervous. As you can see from the fact that I repeated moves here, I had very little time. And when I did go for this bishop c1, I decided that that exchanging one bishop was good, but I vividly recall that I was not sure. I was not sure at all, and I was so scared of just blowing the win here by being incautious. But fortunately, that didn't happen, and now I have such a big advantage both with bishop against knight, the passed pawn. I should mention the passed pawn first, actually, then bishop against knight, and also his pawns on the king side being fixed on the wrong color.
So your bishop could attack him potentially. Yeah.
So he can never obviously take the a5 pawn here with a knight, since since a pawn ending would be easily winning. So in fact, it's a completely straightforward win. Now my king infiltrates, just simply king coming to e6, and then
nice walking in.
That's it. But yeah, it's as I remember it, it was a lot more.
It doesn't look as smooth when you're replaying it.
No, I remember it as being a lot messier than people sort of thought at the time, because I remembered all the emotions I had during the game and all of that. But I think really there were some nice strategical themes. Should be remembered that this knight a1 thing, going there twice. It's really all about concrete evaluation of the position. Like, what is his idea? What do I do? What do I need to do to counter it? And the most like knight a1 are, to my mind, they're not so difficult to play because of two factors. One is that long term, I'm doing pretty well, which means that these temporary concessions are not that important. And secondly, because I don't have a choice. Like by elimination, I could see that other moves simply didn't cut it.
Right.
So I had to go for it. But I guess to actually play it, you have to get rid of some mental bias.
Yeah.
But once you do that, it's pretty simple. I can imagine for Mickey, it was hard maybe to take the idea seriously at first that White could just go knight a1 and be much better.
Yeah, just chill and be for choice here.
But yeah, sometimes that's the way it is. And also looking at it today, it feels pretty obvious that White is just better with the knight and a1, since I have. It feels like I should have the time to develop and be better.
Yeah, that's such an important point. As you're getting better, you start to learn when to break the rules, when you can get away with it, and when it's actually good in the position to do so and get rid of those biases.
Yeah. Again, sometimes you try and break the rules and you get punished. Other times you break the rules because you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought the regrouping theme later was also quite nice in that you weren't completely attached to keeping your pawn. I could imagine a lot of players would think, I can't lose the d4 pawn. If I lose the d4 pawn, I'm not going to have any winning chances here.
I think it was also a product of the way that I was thinking at the time, that I was that this pawn, I think, to be honest, this particular pawn just bothered me, that it restricted all of my pieces. So I would rather give it up, trying to get some active play than to try and carefully nurture that pawn into becoming something dangerous.
Seemed like at both times you were
along the line.
Yeah, you were okay with potentially both scenarios, like you mentioned. Today, maybe you would play it differently in a certain position and try to milk that.
Yeah, probably. Now that I think about it, I mean, this a4 idea, I'm not sure I hate it at all. Like, the idea of knight c3 to d2 is there, and just gaining some control over the light squares here on b5 makes some sense. And whenever he puts a knight on f4 on b4, it means that I can exchange a bishop I'm not so happy with. So maybe it's not so bad, but still, I just remember the desperation of I couldn't find active play, and it really bothered me.
Okay, so not always so smooth in practice, but very fine effort, I think, and I really love that rook b1 move. So well played.
Yeah, that's sort of the things you remember after all. The moves that actually worked, and the fact that it all came together in such a nice way, which, to be honest, even surprised me during the game.